I'm Indra,
And I'm Amanda.
and we'd like to welcome you to The Messy Middle Matters. Hey, Amanda, how are you today?
Good. How are you, Indra?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I know that you and I have lately been thinking about the word seniority as a euphemism and how people use it to mean so many different things in the world. And I'll tell you like a recent story that happens because this is one of my pet peeves is when people use words really broadly with a definition that's unique to them. So recently I had a recruiter reach out to me, cold email, reaching out to me about a role. And I wasn't interested in the role because I'm doing my own thing now, but I suggested a friend of mine who I've, collaborated with over the years, fantastic human being, same career stage and everything. And I sent that off to the recruiter. I said, hey, I know this person's looking for opportunities. They have a very similar background to mine. Here you go. The recruiter sends an email back to me. He goes, don't you think that that person's too senior for this role?
What do you mean by that?
Oh, my self-advocating self said, hello, my friend. This person is a peer, same career stage, led similar size scale teams. You know, if they're too senior, I'm too senior. And I was like,
Right. You reached out to me.
cold email. It's my personal email of all places too. Like, so I have no idea how this person got my email address, but not that it's that hard to figure out. But so he shot back, oh, I hope that you're not offended. That's not what I intended. What I was trying to say was that you're much more hands-on and into the practicalities of the type of role. And this person is much more into the theoretical, and I don't know, remember what other words they use. They may have said strategic. I don't think they use the word strategic, but they were really speaking to like the ability to executive stakeholder and a lot of different things that are out there, all this jargon. So sorry, folks. Um, but that was how he was differentiating the two. And I'm like, oh, that's not too senior. That's two different skill sets within the same craft. Like, and I agree with you that that person is more of that. But dude, stop using senior to differentiate the two of us.
Right. Like, I think this recruiter was using too senior as just a catch-all term, without really understanding, maybe even they probably understood their own definition of
Yes.
too senior, but then when they said it,
They didn't understand how it hits, how it
correct.
hits,
Like
right?
your definition is different. My definition is different. My take on too senior is that, I mean, as you said, it's a euphemism for other things.
It's a euphemism for so many other things. And I've been guilty of using the euphemism. I'll raise my hand on that one. But when you're going to use the euphemism, and sometimes you need to use euphemisms in the workplace for a whole slew of reasons. A lot of
HR
them legal,
reasons.
right? Right. A lot of them very legal, but you need to be really thoughtful about like and intentional and aware of how and why you're using them, right?
Yeah, I think it goes back. I mean, I think I reference our Words Matter episode so many times. Words matter.
Words
Right.
matter,
But
mug.
like what do you mean by that?
What do you
Like
mean by
tell
that?
me more, right? Because too senior doesn't mean anything to me.
No, it doesn't. And it's so let's go through the stuff that the reasons, like some of the most popular reasons or ways that people use the word senior as a euphemism. So and I'm going to use very gross, simple language, not, so there's the person who is like just a figurehead, not a doer,
Mhm.
Um, we've seen this and heard about this in many, many different things. They just get paraded out whenever there's a big event and everyone's like, oh my God, it's such and such. Yay. Like, okay,
Right.
great. Um, there's the person who's like really good at networking and stakeholdering and keynote speaking and providing thought leadership in large forums, right? So like that's a euphemism for that. Someone who commands a high salary, executive presence. I used that phrase before. Somebody with that executive presence, somebody who could be challenging to lead. Sometimes, oh, they're too senior for that. Means I don't have the confidence to be their leader.
Right. They're going to challenge me too much.
Too much. And then the overqualified one, that usually happens in recruitment conversations. So like I've heard it used all those different ways.
The overqualified, that triggers something for me because like I've heard that feedback like personally, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
the
yeah.
good old, we've decided to move forward with someone else. And like here's the vague general feedback we're going to give you. The team thought that you were overqualified.
And they deliver it as if it's a compliment. And
Yeah.
it's not. Like
No.
it's not you are so wonderful at what you do. And um like the way that when I've been in those situations, so I was actually part of a hiring panel, hiring somebody, recruiting somebody, and there were multiple leaders who were making the hiring decision on this particular role. And so we'd met lots of candidates. We had a debrief on the conversation. And I'm like, hey, folks, what did you think of Michelle? And all three people who are helping to make the hiring decision said she's overqualified. And I said, okay,
Why
I
is
un-
that a bad thing?
right, I understand your perspective on that. I can see how you would think that, but isn't it her decision as to whether or not she takes this job? Like we can have the very crucial conversation and candid conversation saying, hey, you have this really good breadth of skills. And like, I don't know if you might be bored in this conversation. Like the role is not going to allow you to exercise this, this, and this because that, and that is going to demand all of your time. You can have that conversation and then give the candidate or give the person the opportunity to say, hey, you know what? You're right. I would get bored. Like, but it's not my decision to make.
Right. Instead of giving this vague feedback of the team thought you were overqualified. And
And I,
so, what I
yeah,
think is interesting is, and I just thought, I know a few episodes back, we talked about unicorn hunting,
unicorn hunting. Yes.
right?
Unicorns
And
and
then, like,
rock stars.
we talked about unicorn hunting, and I think it's so interesting that this dichotomy exists of just like we want the best, brightest star unicorn, but also not too qualified
We
because
want
we're
them to
going to
know
tell
their
you you're
place.
overqualified. You're too senior, actually.
But it's so true. I think we're not clear. Like we're not clear on, and I think that might be why some people also use the euphemism senior. Like they may not even know what they're trying to say, but they yank in the word. They're like, feels too senior to me, or oh, they're so senior. Like I don't understand that. Like, you know,
Right. It's just again, it's a catch-all term that captures unclear expectations or like you actually don't know what you're looking for.
right?
So I just know it's not right. So I'm gonna say they're too senior.
They're too senior. And like some of the other ones, they might literally think that somebody is too chronologically senior.
Yeah, that is such a good PC way of saying that.
Oh, because it's so funny. Like it's or they're too expensive. That's another way to say too
Yep.
senior, especially in recruitment. Or they have antiquated thinking. Like I've had conversations with folks who are looking for roles. The market is tough right now. Like let's be very honest, for knowledge workers, really, really tough. Um, and like they get all of this feedback, it's I don't know if it's so like they'll say that it's ageism. I don't know if it's like directly ageism, but I see how age plays into it because it is this. I don't know how to manage this person. I don't know if they'll be contemporary in their thinking. I don't know if I can afford them. I don't know. So,
Right. There are a lot of correlations here,
yes.
right? With
Yes.
the two chronologically
The
senior.
chronologically senior ones.
Right. Well, and you bring up an interesting point, right? Like I think it's this catch-all term to hide biases, whether or not you're intentionally hiding them.
100%. And like whether they're conscious or unconscious, to your point,
Right.
like that's the question. And I think that what I like to do when I catch myself in some sort of euphemism is ask myself, why am I saying it? And is there a way, if there isn't a super um, useful way for me to be using that euphemism, are there different words or is there a qualifier that I can use for it? It's like, hey, that person has a lot of scope, like a lot of background, and they're used to working on super complex systems. And what we have right now is a pretty straightforward process. I don't know if they're going to be happy and engaged enough in this role. you can have that dialogue with, let's say, I mean, I think recruitment is probably the easiest place for us to talk about some of this stuff, right? But it applies in lots of different places. Um, but then you can have that conversation with that panel that's evaluating candidates, right? And then you'll be able to examine, like, oh, are we all in agreement with what that means? Can we overcome that? Is this something that we should put into that candidate's court and say, hey, let me paint the landscape for you, right? Because the law exists. So the employment law exists to protect a lot of the employment law. I won't say all of it, but a lot of the employment law exists to protect the candidates and the individuals, right? Let them, and it's there for a reason. Let them make the decisions, power them with that. And if you need to recruit in 6 months, you didn't read you might need to recruit in 6 months if you wound up with, not going with that person too. You're never guaranteeing bulletproofing your decision. So,
Right. I think a good place to start would be, when you hear, oh, they're too senior,
mhm,
right? Or they're overqualified.
yeah.
We're using those pieces of feedback
Mhm,
interchangeably in this conversation. But I think a good place to start would be asking yourself or asking the
mhm,
team, what is the concern? What is your concern with that?
yeah.
Right? Like, what's the real issue here? Like, why are you giving this feedback? Is it because you think that they're too expensive, that,
Mhm,
they're just not within budget, right?
yeah.
Okay, bring that back to the candidate and say, hey, this is what we're going to pay. And to your point about, when you were talking about Michelle, um, let them make the decision.
Let them make the decision. And, it's also the other side of this is when somebody says you're not senior enough or you're too senior or whatever, like whatever the answer is, like maybe they're not senior enough because that's what triggered for me in that exchange with that recruiter was like that not enoughness. I'm like, hold on.
Mm-hmm.
Hold the mic. I do for the feedback I've received over the course of my career, not enough executive presence or not enough, I some stakeholder management I'm really good at and some stakeholder management I'm less good at, right? And so some of that stuff might be that, or, I don't, I'm not the I will not I will be challenged when I'm in a room full of suits who are used to posturing and having conversations based on the rules of boardrooms from the 1980s, right? I'm going to be challenged. I'm going to be challenged to mask, blend, fit in, go toe to toe in that whatever like measurement contest that's going on there. Um,
I think we could do a whole episode about executive presence because I have a lot of thoughts about
Probably,
that too.
probably. But I think that in this scenario, when you're the person receiving the feedback saying that you're too senior or not senior enough, ask the qualifying question or a clarifying question, not qualifying, clarifying question. Say, hey, that word can mean lots of different things. It's a little trickier to ask that question than versus like, what do you mean by design? But ask that question, and say, hey, what did you mean by that? Because I'm just trying to understand because the words can mean different things, and I want to make sure I'm ingesting your feedback in the most clear way.
Right. It's a polite way of asking people to be more detailed with their
Direct
feedback.
too.
Direct, detailed, actually actionable feedback,
Mhm.
as opposed to you're too senior.
You're too senior. You're too senior. And I think that we all need to check ourselves for when we, like I said, I think that's where we started this whole conversation. We need to check ourselves on when we use that type of terminology, like because it can be very damaging, in the worst case scenarios. In the middle scenarios, it can be confusing and ambiguous AF, right? In the best case scenarios, you're aligned because you're in a group that you've had used these euphemisms before. Again, for legal reasons, you might be using euphemisms to talk around things. But, do better. We all need to do better. I need to do better for using the word and for advocating for clarity. And I think that we all do.
Yeah, I think that last point, what jumped in my brain was it might be part of the company culture to use these euphemisms, right? Instead of being more
So
direct and
true.
detailed.
Not every company is direct, and I don't do well in those. Yeah, no, I think you're right. Sometimes you're battling culture and sometimes you can't
Mhm.
get that clarity. I mean, as much as you
Right.
might want to, you can maybe nudge towards it. But maybe
Right.
and
You
that's
can
go ahead.
Yeah, you can nudge towards it. You can poke a little, but you may never get it depending on the company and its culture and
Yeah.
uh, how much they're willing to share their honest thoughts.
Excuse me. I have a little bit of a cough. Water went down the wrong pipe. Anyway, so in those scenarios, I'm thinking of a tactic that's worked for me in the past when people haven't been able to clarify what do they mean by something. I'm like, are they more like this person or more like that person? Not that everyone can be aligned to or whatever, but are they, more like this leader or more like that leader? That might give you the sense of that. Like, oh, okay. I understand what you're saying. Or if you can't go that direct route, you can say, who would be good for this? Like what's an example of the seniority that you're talking about? That's another backdoor way
Right. I feel like we've had this conversation
in.
about, I forget even what the topic was, but,
Hmm,
and I'm going to change names, right? But we've had this conversation of like, well, who's a good example of this?
it's a good example.
And everybody in the room was like, Dan's a good example of this.
Exactly. And that's a lovely way to get the attributes when people can't find their words. Find
Right.
their words. Love it.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts or things that you want to add?
No, I think the recap is let's be more clear about what two senior means because it's a vague term.
It's vague. It's so vague, overused, broadly, maybe not, yeah, overused, broadly used in way too many contexts for us just to be able to use it and assume that everybody understands what we're talking about and is clear and is
Yeah.
clear. Yay. Thank you, Amanda, for yet another lovely conversation around something in the messy middle. Hopefully, everybody who is listening got something out of today's episode, and you'll join us next time for another topic for the messy middle. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for taking time with us in the messy middle. Word of mouth remains most powerful way for people to find us. If this episode sparked something for you, we'd love it if you'd subscribe to the podcast on your favorite app, download a few episodes, and share it with someone else who's navigating the in between. Do you have ideas for future episodes or topics you'd like us to explore? You can find our feedback form at themessymiddlematters.com or in the show notes. Thank you for joining us on this journey. This work is better when we do it together. Until next time.